everyone, Professor Davis here, and we are going to do two tests today to check for biomolecules. Specifically, we're going to be checking for starch, which is a polysaccharide. It is the polysaccharide for carbohydrates, okay, those complex sugars. And so we're going to do a test, and we're going to use the chemical iodine to test for a positive starch. Now, iodine kind of has like this yellow amber color, kind of like a weak tea color. That is going to be if iodine is not reacting with starch, okay? So it's going to have its normal color. However, when it's added and starch is present, it's going to change from that color to this purplish black color. So the color change is going to be the indication. So what you're going to do is I'm going to do the test in a minute, and then you're going to answer some questions about those tests. And you're going to use a chart like this. You're going to tell me if it was positive or negative for the starch test. Okay, so whether the color changed or not. And then you're also then going to tell me if starch is present or not. If it stays a more yellow amber color, then it's not present, starch is not present. But if it changes to a purple black, it is present. So you're going to end up interpreting those results for me. We are going to test things like water, egg, potato, milk, peanuts, bread, and onions. And that's what we're going to do for the starch test. We're also then going to test for fats. Now we're going to do this by using a basic paper towel. We're going to place these items on that paper towel. We're going to let them sit for about 15 to 20 minutes. Don't worry, you won't have to watch it dry. That would be like watching paint dry. We're not going to do that. I'm going to time lapse it and skip to where we actually get to the results. And again, you're going to then see if it's present. Okay, if it is positive, this means that there is like a translucent part where you can see through the actual paper towel. That tells us the fat is present. If it's not, and it just looks like a normal paper towel, then that's negative. So positive means that lipids or fats are present, and negative means that they are not, all right? And so you're going to be responsible for interpreting those results, deciding if the result was positive or negative, and whether a lipid is present or not present. And you're going to do this for both of these tests. All right, so continue watching, and we are going to go with the starch test first. All right, so we are going to be looking at testing these particular substances, and we are going to be testing them based on whether starch is present. Now, this starch test is going to be done using small amounts of each of these items, like water. We're also going to put some egg. We're then going to test some potato, and in this case we're going to use potato flakes, milk. We're going to then have peanuts crushed up, some bread, and then some slices of onion. And so we're going to test these, and we are going to do that using this type of iodine. Now this can be purchased at the store, so you can technically do this test at home if you would like. You just need to purchase small amounts of each of these items and an iodine type of thing you can buy at the store in the first aid section. So now at this particular point, I'm going to add a little bit into each of these containers. All right, so we're going to put a little bit of each of these items in onto this plate. Now, the liquid parts were a little trickier, so I used these caps to water bottles to place them in. So the first one I put water, and now I'm going to put some egg in the second one, and I am going to collect a little bit of the yolk and the egg white, and I'm going to place it here. Now, I did remove this one off the plate because I didn't want to contaminate it and make a mess if it was to spill. So we have some of that there. Now for the potato, I am using potato flakes, and so these are just dried potatoes, and I'm going to place some of them again onto the plate, and so that way that we can test them. And guys, on these little things that I'm using to put these in here, whether it's a syringe or a popsicle stick, I am switching out so they're sterile each time. I'm not cross-contaminating. The next one, I'm going to add milk. Again, I'm removing it from the paper plate so I don't contaminate, and added a little bit of milk into that cap. And now I'm going to add some peanuts. Now these peanuts, I crushed them up. These are just peanuts you buy at the store, and we crushed them up, and we're going to then place them directly onto the plate. Now the next thing we're going to put is bread, and so I used an actual just slice of bread. I just pulled it out of the loaf of bread, and I just pinched some out of the middle, and I'm going to again lay it just onto the plate. Kind of spread it out, lay it on the plate. The next one I'm going to do is the onion. Here I cut an onion ahead of time, placed it in these little containers, and we're going to place a few slivers of this onion onto the plate. Now that everything is on the plate, we're going to now start the test. And this is where I'm going to use an actual dropper, and I'm going to take that iodine and put drops of them onto each of these substances so that we can test it to see if they come out positive or negative. All right, so here's my dropper that I have, and I'm going to fill it with some of the iodine, and I'm going to put about 2 drops into each of these. Now, as we do this, I am going to drop them, and then questions are going to come up, and you're going to tell me if it's positive, negative, and if protein is present or not. All right, so our first test here is water. I added the iodine in, and you can see what happens color-wise. Then we added to the egg. Now it does kind of dance around weird based on the chemical makeup of the egg, but again, this lets you see if it is positive or negative. Now with this, I wanted to make sure we got a really good test where all the iodine was mixed in, and so I did use one of my stirrers and I stirred it up to make sure that we got a good stir in there. All right, and then we're going to get our dropper back and we're going to then add it to the potato. All right, so 2 drops again. I'm going to use a stirrer and I'm going to mix it up. So you're going to need to interpret the data here, positive or negative. Does it have starch or not? Now compare it, because you can see that we do have a different color that's present here. All right, now we're going to add to the milk. The milk does kind of the similar thing we saw with the egg. And so again, I'm going to mix it up to make sure that we get all that iodine mixed in there to see the results. We're going to add a couple of drops on there to the peanuts, and I'm going to mix it up as well. And it's important that we do this just so that the iodine comes in contact with all the components so we can make sure we get a good, accurate test. All right, so now we're going to move on and use the bread. 2 drops onto the bread. Let's look and see if it is positive or negative. All right, and so see, when we look at the colors can be seen instantly. And again, last but not least, we have the onions. And so we're going to add a little bit, and I am going to move it around to make sure that it hits all parts of the onion. All right, so you're going to make sure that you've answered your interpretation questions that are through this video so that you can tell whether it was a positive test or a negative test for each of these. Again, you can do this test at home. You can test each of these substances. They're just regular things you get from the grocery store. And with that, you do need some iodine, and it is found in the first aid section. Now, there are different types. This is the type I have, but you can also get betadine. Betadine is very similar, and it has iodine present. All right, so now we're going to switch tests, and we are going to look at the test for lipids. And now, I didn't have a brown paper bag, but we can use a paper towel just the same. So I've got my paper towel, and I'm going to put small amounts of each of these substances onto the paper towel. I'm going to start here with water. I'm going to do all the liquids first, just because it's easier since I'm using those tools before I move on to the ones who aren't liquid. So we're going to put water on the paper towel first. Then we're going to move on and put some of the egg, okay? And so I'm going to use some of the egg, a little bit of yolk and white. I'm going to use a little bit of both, just so we can make sure we get both sides of what's in that egg. Okay, we're going to place it on the paper towel. Now, oil is actually not on your results because we already know oil has fat in it. I want you to use this as a comparison. All right, so based on these tests that we're seeing here, you're going to compare it to the oil because we know that lipids are present in oil. So I'm putting a little bit of oil on here so that you can see when it is completely dry, what a positive lipid or oil test looks like. We're then going to take some of those crushed up peanuts and we're going to press them onto the paper towel. All right, so we got crushed up peanuts, pressing them onto the paper towel. And guys, these are similar substances that we saw that we were using for the starch test. We're also going to grab some of the bread and we're going to place the bread onto the paper towel, kind of spread it out. We're going to then use some pieces of onion, laying them down on there. And then for potato, we're going to actually use the potato chip. Okay, I got some potato chips. I kind of broke them up and stuck them on there. Now this has to sit for about 10 to 20 minutes to let it fully dry. All right, now that it's completely dry, we are going to take a look at our results. And so if you look here, you can see the oil test, of course, is our positive test. You can see that I put my fingers behind it. You can see the fingers coming through the paper towel. It left a grease spot. So now what I want you to do is look at each of these that we tested. You're going to tell me if it was a positive test like we had with the oil or a negative test like we had with the water. This then is going to help you determine is a lipid present or if a lipid is absent. All right, so take a minute, take a look at these, and we will then go through some questions for your results. All right, so this is a test, again, you can do at home. This stuff is easy to buy at the store, so you could recreate some of these results. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, please let me know.